Geordie Journo's back again, or should I say Geordie Journo. No Dominic Sker again today. He'll be back for the game against Tottenham Hotspur tomorrow, which we've just previewed with Eddie Howe. I'm going to start the video here before I make my way to the car again, because I am over time, and as you know, if you watch Geordie Journo's regularly, we get a bit panicky when we think we're going to get kicked out, and I think I probably will. Gate behind open me there, so the players will be coming out on the training pitch soon, so if I'm in sight, I'll be told off. So lots to digest in that press conference, the main talking point being Joelinton, which we'll come on to, but again, as we always do with the Geordie Journos, we start on injuries and the injury situation. Well, there's no players back this weekend, and there's potentially one to add to that injury list. It's Lewis Hall. Hasn't trained this week because of a quad issue. Eddie Howe said he was a doubt for the game, so if Lewis Hall doesn't play, who did Newcastle play at left back? We'll come back onto that, but yeah, other injury situation, Joe Willock obviously came off against Fulham, Achilles injury. He is going to miss the Tottenham game, but could be back after that. Eddie Howe said there's a chance he could play again this season, but they will be mindful of his injury. He's been to see a specialist again this week. He says the injury is healing, but there is times when it fluctuates, and there's times when Joe Willock isn't feeling his fully fit self, so definitely ruled out this weekend, but as I say, possibly a chance he could make the squad after that. They certainly need bodies, Newcastle. Further injury news, there was updates on Kieran Trippier. No return date for him, although Eddie Howe says he's progressing well. The same for Lewis Miley too, and Matt Targett, player that has rarely been on the pitch this season. I think his season's over. Eddie Howe mentioned a few weeks ago he had an Achilles problem, didn't think it was serious, but further assessment has shown that it is much serious than what they thought. So Eddie Howe didn't say, but I'm presuming that means he's out for the season. So there's injury update from Newcastle United's training ground. I'll be back in my Skoda Fabia to give you the rest of the chatter from the press conference. So yeah, we are back in the car and back at my usual parking spot just across the road from Newcastle United's training ground, just as I was last week. And see, if I can't be in Newcastle United's training ground, I suppose I get the next best thing, that's across the road. But anyway, yeah, as I mentioned there, the injury situation, potentially 13 players out if you include Lewis Hall against Tottenham Hotspur. God knows what the bench will be looking like tomorrow. Little youngsters on that bench, but that is the norm in Newcastle United season. It never comes as a surprise injury situation anymore. It's been a constant throughout the season and just won't improve until next year, although Eddie Howe did say that he hopes 3 or 4 players will be back in the not too distant future. Who that is, time will tell, but yeah, for Spurs tomorrow, no one back, and possibly without Lewis Hall. So of course, I mentioned at the start of the video there, Joelinton, the big talking point. New long-term contract for Joelinton. The club didn't specify how long, rumoured to be 4 years. So a big boost for Newcastle, and Eddie Howe described it as amazing news, which it is. Wasn't straightforward, as Eddie Howe alluded to. At one stage, didn't really look like Joelinton was going to sign a new contract. Negotiations were at a bit of a standstill. Joelinton demanding the wage he feels he deserves, being one of the club's highest earners. Thankfully Newcastle have got to that stage and have managed to agree a new deal. I do think if you look at Newcastle's transformation, or even Joelinton's transformation over the last 2 years or so, Joelinton has been a big part of that and probably deserves on current merit to be one of the club's highest earners, which is exactly what that deal does. So why did it take so long? When Eddie Howe was asked that, and he said it was a big contract for him. He's at an age where it's a pivotal moment in his career. I'll make this clear, he never doubted his love for Newcastle or his want to stay, but of course everything has to be right. It is a complex process where representatives are involved. It's never straightforward. but throughout the process, Joelinton has been excellent with his conduct, and the message to me is he's always wanted to stay. We're very grateful for everyone involved that we're able to get to this stage. So yeah, a lot of people have played a part in this. Eddie Howe, of course, but Steve Nixon stepping in, head of recruitment to Hull Talks, Joelinton, of course, Amanda, Darren Neal's heavily involved as well. So it's been a big effort to get Joelinton to sign a new deal, and it's you could see the delight on Eddie Howe's face today that he's managed to get to that stage, and Joelinton will be part of this club for long term, and will have a big part to play in where Newcastle go in the coming years. A lot of people, when Joelinton signed a new contract, is, could that be a boost in terms of getting Bruno to stay? Now, I'm not going to sit here and say Bruno's going to leave this summer. I think it's quite clear that Bruno is very, very happy at Newcastle, but there's interest there, the release clause is there. So there's always a little dangle of doubt, if you like, that in 12 months' time Bruno will be here. But I think it's up to the player completely. I think he stays, just whether it's taken out of his hands in terms of the release clause. But ultimately, the player has the option to stay always, and does Joelinton's long-term commitment to Newcastle impact Bruno? Now, he wasn't asked specifically about Bruno, Eddie Howe, but he talked about the impact of what this new contract would have on other players at the club, and potentially players joining the club. And Eddie Howe said it certainly helps, and it helps with the perception of our ambition that we're still desperate to grow and improve. For me, to do that, you have to try and keep your best players. You have to create something that everyone wants to be a part of. We're not looking at future signings on this contract. This is about trying to retain your best players and give yourself the best chance of being successful in the long term. So yeah, there's a lot of positive things this Joelinton new deal could bring. So yeah, of course, the players' ability, getting them back on the pitch hopefully very soon, which I will mention in a moment because Eddie Howe was asked about that. And of course, keeping the two Brazilian boys together. Perhaps it will be a persuasion for Bruno to stay that little bit longer, if indeed the interest in him ramps up this summer. But yeah, Joelinton, Newcastle have missed him massively, of course they have. I don't have to sit here and say that. You guys know that. Everyone who watches Newcastle knows that his physical presence has been a big miss in midfield, and just that nastiness. And we talked about Newcastle being streetwise last season in Eddie Howe's something house mags. Well, Joelinton was sort of the epitome of that, and they really have missed him in the midfield this season. But the good news is that it sounds like he could return towards the end of the season. Eddie Howe was asked, will Joelinton play again this season? He said, yeah, I think Joe will tell you yes, but we need to make sure he's ready to play. We can't rush the process. He's feeling good, and we have to minimise the risk. Joelinton was asked in his club interview about his injury. He said he was targeting a return at the end of before the end of the season. He's back on the grass, running, kicking the ball. So he's at the final stage, if you like, albeit probably still a few weeks away. But with that extra game in May now, with the Manchester United game being rearranged, if Joelinton can get himself back, then he's potentially got 4 games at the end of the season, or the final month of the season, to get a run of games. And look, it isn't a huge amount of games, but at the end of the day, Newcastle are pushing for European football, and having Joelinton back in that team is a big boost, and could in many ways be a very, very deciding factor. So another topic which we'll go on to, which sort of ties in with the Joelinton situation, is transfers. Not long to go now. Transfer window opens very, very soon, some months, obviously near the end of the season. The transfer window, I think, is going to be a busy one to report on. Whether much happens, we'll have to wait and see. But one big moving part, potentially the transfer window, was Joelinton's future. Now, Eddie Howe admitted in January that if Joelinton didn't sign a new contract, there was a possibility he could be sold this summer. Obviously, that's not going to happen now. His future sorted. So one of the questions to Eddie Howe was, does Joelinton's contract allow you to firm up your transfer plans for the summer? Eddie Howe's response was, it certainly allows us to plan with him as part of the squad, and that is hugely important. He is versatile, can play in different positions, and that takes away the stress and the respect. As I mean, we don't have to worry about those positions. it's still going to be a slightly difficult summer to plan for. There are a lot of unknowns in the transfer market, and you mentioned about in January as well, and I think that will carry on into the summer. We will see how it plays out. We have our plans and we're preparing for that now. So plans for the summer transfer window are underway. I think one big thing about Joelinton, and this is another thing that Eddie Howe spoke about in the press conference, is his versatility, Joelinton's versatility. Now, I think the one good thing about Newcastle's squad, actually, I think they've got a lot of players who are versatile. Joelinton, of course, centre mid, left hand side. Losing those players are very hard to replace. There aren't too many players out there that I can think of anyway that can cover multiple positions like Joelinton can. A midfield enforcer, and we all talk about Joelinton as a midfielder, but I actually thought last season his best position was the left hand side, because he had goals to his game. I think Newcastle's best run of form was with Joelinton on the left. So the fact that he's a great midfielder and can play on the left hand side, there aren't too many players like him. He's very, very unique in what he is, and having to replace that would have been an expensive job, and that's pretty much what Eddie Howe was alluding to. Just go through the transcript here. Another question here. Joelinton's injury essentially changed transfer plans for January. Is he almost unique, which was I was talking about? How difficult would it have been to replace him this summer given all alternatives considered? And then, as I've just spoke about there, but I'll give you Eddie Howe's words. He said, I say this about a lot of players we have, they're not easy to find replacements for. Joe would have been one of those. He's 6'3", plays in different positions. He's strong, he's quick, he scores goals, he's competitive, he's got a great attitude. Those players aren't around to recruit easily. That's why we've got to treasure the good ones we have and do everything we can to keep them happy, so they want to play for Newcastle continually. Replacing them sounds easy, but it's absolutely not. We have to treasure the ones we have. So yeah, essentially what I said, but Eddie Howe puts it in better words than me. So yeah, moving. I suppose the only thing I would say about the Joelinton deal is he's now one of the club's highest earners. Now, we've all seen the talk of the Premier League possibly switching up its profitability and sustainability rules in line with UEFA, which focus more on wages. I think it's either 75-80% of your income can go on wages. Now, of course, Newcastle ramping up their wage bill with the Joelinton deal has ramifications. Eddie Howe mentioned that. He said, of course, something like that will have ramifications. You're potentially lifting wages that has an impact on your financial fair play sheet, but the alternative is that Joe leaves on a free transfer, which for a player of his quality would be really bad business from us. And I think that what has happened has alleviated that problem, but of course maybe gives you problems elsewhere that you need to fix. So I think that was the scenario under Dan Ashworth when Newcastle first negotiated a deal, is how high do you go in terms of wages in line with financial fair play rules. Now obviously Dan Ashworth's left, and as I mentioned, the people at the start, like Simanda Stavely, Darren Eales, they've took all negotiations and feel that the best outcome is for Joelinton to be rewarded with a new contract and good wages at that, which it's hard to disagree. As Eddie Howe mentioned there, the prospect of losing Joelinton on a free transfer would be nonsensical. So I think Newcastle have done the right thing, but it's gonna, as Eddie Howe mentioned there, it's gonna potentially have ramifications on the transfer window, which what happens in the summer, as I mentioned earlier, remains open. There's a feeling that Newcastle maybe do have to sell players this summer in order to maximise the budget. Now, one of the questions put to Eddie Howe from one of my colleagues was straight, said, can you buy without selling? It's a big question. Eddie Howe, in his response, sort of stayed away from it. I'll read out now. He said, with financial fair play now, I think there will be decisions made by every club that they don't necessarily want to make. there'll be players leaving and transfers done, maybe from a manager's perspective in former times that wouldn't have happened. It's difficult for me to give absolute clarity on what's going on and what's not going to happen because I don't know. But financial fair play is still and will be in the summer something we have to be aware of. So the pitch, as I mentioned there, the picture in terms of the summer is slightly unclear, as I mentioned there. If Newcastle are going to have to sell, which I spoke about my pre-match video last week, the likes of your Brunos, your Isaacs are non-sellers for me. You keep away from selling them. You look to below that, which, to name a few, you've got like your Callum Wilsons, your Almirons, etc. I wonder if there'll be movement more on them players. Your Matt Targets, who's after his injury record it's been a struggle of late. So there's players I would look to get rid of before even considering like the Isaacs and Brunos. But say it does sound like Newcastle are going to have to sell in order to maximise the budget, because we all want new incomings. I think one thing that there is in football, there's no room for sentimentality, and that ultimately leads to players leaving the football club. I think there's not any members in the squad that Newcastle fans particularly want to see the back of. It's a very likeable squad, but in order to progress forward, there needs to be changes, and that's not in Newcastle. That's at every other football club as well. Your squad has to consistently evolve for you to be competing at the top, and Newcastle, I'm sure, will get into the habit of doing that in the next few years, FFP permitting, of course. Right, on to the Tottenham game now. Talking about FFP transfers, one player Newcastle did want to sign, James Maddison. He will come up against Newcastle as a Tottenham Hotspur player for the first time. Was injured for the defeat down in North London late last year. Eddie Howe asked about James Maddison, asked if a deal was ever close. He said, I don't think he was ever close in literal terms, but he's a player that I've admired for many years. He's outstanding. I watched him play for Coventry for many years ago, going way back, and liked him straight away. He's never come close to signing for me, but regardless of that, he's a player I think is outstanding talent, and when fit, he's really excelled with Ange's style, and he's certainly a player we need to keep quiet tomorrow. Can't argue with that. He's Tottenham's danger man, is James Maddison, although they have got a lot of good players, Tottenham. I think last season or the seasons previous to that, they relied on one source for goals. That was Harry Kane. Now Harry Kane's gone. They've got players who can score goals across the pitch, like James Maddison's, even Richarlison. Enjoyed a couple against Newcastle in the early season fixture. Kulusevski. They've got a lot of talent on the pitch. So Newcastle goes out saying we'll have to be at their best tomorrow if they want to get a result against Tottenham Hotspur. Such a difficult ask. Again, it's the lack of substitutions that worry me, because I think Newcastle for 60 minutes can compete against Spurs toe for toe, in my opinion. Toe for toe, yeah. Can do that, in my opinion. It's just when it gets to the latter stages of the game, you look to your bench and yeah, it's depleted. Mentioned there youngsters on the bench who Eddie Howe hasn't really called on this season. You're gonna have to trust the likes of your Joe Whites, your Paul Dummett's, even an Alex Murphy. You're gonna have to trust those players to come on, because puts a lot of strain on the starting players. It's a big ask for them to go out and play 90 minutes at the high intensity that Newcastle do. So that's my biggest concern for the Spurs game, and even the weeks ahead, is that I think Newcastle have got a good start 11 that can compete, but the lack of substitutions may be the difference, if you like. I think impact subs tomorrow, a lot of you guys out there will want to see Harvey Barnes start on the left, Anthony Gordon on the right, and Isaac through the middle. But then who do you leave on the bench? Jacob Murphy as your impact sub, and he's played that role over the years for Newcastle. Played it very well. But the prospect of having Harvey Barnes coming off the bench to Jacob Murphy is a far more exciting one for me personally. We've seen that Harvey Barnes is a very good impact sub, so you can bring Harvey Barnes on. But then in terms of your attacking subs, who else is there? There's not many options. So yeah, the options from the bench are low, as they have been for a large part of the season. If Newcastle are to go and get European football, as I've said several times, they're going to have to dig deep and more. So yeah, the start 11 tomorrow. I mentioned Lewis Hall earlier, who will come in at left back. If Lewis Hall doesn't play, you've got Paul Dummett potentially, or Alex Murphy at left back. Alex Murphy, a young lad, made his Premier League debut at the end of that Chelsea game 4-1 in November. Hasn't played since. I liked what I've seen. I think I've spoken about it on this channel. Yeah, I like what I've seen from Alex Murphy. I thought he was really, really good in pre-season. Came on off the bench against Chelsea in the Premier League Summer Series in the United States. Done excellently at left back. Then played centre half alongside Sven Botman in one of the Stella Cup games. He looked good, and he looked like he was in many ways, although a young lad, ready to play when called upon. It hasn't quite happened for him in terms of that game time, but I think maybe between now and the end of the season, potentially someone we could see more of. And if Alex Murphy's in that start 11 tomorrow, I don't have too many concerns. I would back the lad to do a job. So that would be my choice. If Lewis Hall is ruled out tomorrow, I would probably play Alex Murphy, but I suspect it would more likely be Paul Dummett, because he's a senior member of the squad and has the trust of Eddie Howe. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see tomorrow when the team news lands at 11:30, a really early start. Don't like the 12:30 kickoffs. Too early for me. I like to see a bit of a lie-in on a Saturday. If it's a 3 o'clock at St James's Park, obviously when you're travelling down to London and back, as we did in the day last week, that was an early start and a late finish. So yeah, 12:30s, I don't like them. But the last 12:30 I had 4-3 against West Ham. I would love a repeat of that. Maybe less chaotic. I want a Newcastle win. That's what I want. Or ideally a repeat of last season's 6-1, 5-1, 5-0 up in the opening 20 minutes. That would be nice. I think that's very unlikely, but who knows? You never know. Anyway, so yeah, thanks everyone who's watched this, another solo effort. They're difficult to do. I've tried my best, but I need Dom back. I need Liam by my side as well. So the three of us will be at St James's Park tomorrow, as I say, for that Tottenham Hotspur game. But in the meantime, if you like this video, you like what we do, please like, comment, share, subscribe, ring the bell for your latest Geordie Journos content.